All right.
Given the option, you wouldn't eat them.
I apparently picked a bad question, so that's clearly on me. Great, awesome. Well, welcome. I am so glad that you guys are willing to do this because there could be a lot of pressure behind wanting to speak on a sensitive topic, and while also there's a ton of courage to it. So I just want to say up front, I just want to say thank you to you three. And in this dialogue and in small group, I want to just invite a space of compassion, of empathy, of not criticism or a critical heart, but critical thinking, absolutely. But if we can collectively have that together, I firmly believe this is going to be a really good evening in discussing this stuff. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to look through the lens of the parable of the Good Samaritan. And when you think about Black History Month, when you think about racial reconciliation, discrimination, you probably don't necessarily jump right to the parable of the Good Samaritan. However, it is going to be our text in which we're going to talk about tonight. And I have some people who are going to help act it out for me. So, if you are acting out this parable, please make your way to the front.
Applause. Insert applause.
All right, so here's what's going to happen. First off, you staff, does everyone know their role? Is anyone not clear on their role? Getchell, do you know who you are?
I thought he was going to be the donkey.
Did I not tell you?
Is it a horse? Is it a donkey? What is it?
I think they stated just
Hold on. Hold on. Roles. Getchell, you're the Samaritan. Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on.
I think we need 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Do you have another question?
Intermission.
I'm changing it. You're a robber, okay, as well.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Shaq. All right, here we go. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to read the narrative. They are going to act it out. They're not going to talk. They're just going to use their impressive theatrical skills to woo you into knowing this story just a little bit more. Danae, can you do me a favor? Actually, I'm gonna have you stand, just and you're just gonna come sit right over here, just so we can give a little more stage space for them. So here we go. All right, let me make sure that I am. Yes. Great, awesome. As long as we know who we are. Perfect. All right, here we go. And scene. Wait, are we? Oh, Jason. Where's Jason? Jason Gross. You're the Inkeeper. Yep, come over here. Clearly, we know what we're doing here. Clearly. This was not thrown together 7 minutes ago. We need an intermission before we even begin. All right, here we go. Now, attempt number two. And scene. Here we go. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to ask Jesus, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, he says this: "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho," and Ashley, "when he fell into the hand of robbers." Apparently he was taking a nap as well. So he's getting beaten up while he's taking a nap. They beat him. They stripped him of his clothes. Will not do that. Beat him again. And it went away, leaving him half dead. Great. Almost dead person. Can you stand up for a second? And can you make your way to the center of the stage? Because that's a little bit more convenient. Thank you. Great. Awesome. Now, continuing on. A priest happened to be going down the same road when he saw the man, and he looked at him and passed on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him and looked and pondered and prayed and petitioned, this isn't in there, he passed by the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to the bandaged man, put bandage on his wounds, pouring oil and wine on him. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn and took care of him. This is great. You're doing so good. You're doing so good. He gets to the inn. The inn.
Here's the end.
He gets to the inn.
I just want to see it again.
There, he took the man to an inn for the fourth time to take care of him. The innkeeper took the... The innkeeper took him.
You're going up. We're taking care of you.
The next day, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expenses that you may have. End scene. That was something. The narrative concludes. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Go and do likewise. Can we give it up for you, staff, one more time? Remind me to students to never let them do that again. I kid. What? At least one person what? Oh, well, it's one rehearsal. Got it. I should make the. Do you want to do a round 2 with the students, see if they can show them up? Okay, all right, hey, bring it in. All right, so probably the most interesting enactment of the parable of the Good Samaritan that you've ever seen, that I've ever seen, and yet, hopefully, gives us one look as of many looks that we're going to get into the lens of the Good Samaritan. There's a decent chance that you probably have heard this parable before, dozens of times, but we want to look at it through a very specific lens. There's a map up on the screen here, and if you can, I know it's small, but down here is Jerusalem, here is Jericho, and so this is the route in which, in this parable, that this gentleman was going down as he got beaten up. As he's going down the road, I think this is really fascinating because in the parable, let me give you a little bit of context for a second. This road, when it says they pass by on the other side, here's what's super fascinating. Jesus is using a bit of irony, if you will. The road itself if you can tell, it's up on a mountainside, and it's going down a mountainside, and then Jericho's all the way at the bottom. This is a treacherous road, and it is really, really small. I had the chance to go to Israel, and on this picture, what you see here up against the mountain, I know it's kind of grainy, that's the road. That's the road up there. This road is like probably max 4 feet long. 4 feet across. So when it says that the person passed over on the other side, they actually were stepping over the person because it was a very tiny road. Here's another example of it. We're talking just a couple feet across. So Jesus is making a statement to say, hey, this really is, they're going explicitly out of their way to walk over an individual. So we have our road. We also have, let me backtrack. We have our context as to why Samaritans, why were they so despised? Because in that time, they were. They were a sect of Judaism. They were a sect of the Jewish people. And back in the 2nd century BC, they ended up kind of going away from the ways of God. The pagans started coming into their area and taking over, and they almost invited it, where the Jews were like, no, we're not going to do this, isn't going to happen. They almost invited, and they started siding with these kind of pagan religions and stuff like that. They also had a Bible that was kind of their own thing, so they veered away from the Jewish tradition, and they just were not liked at all. If you had concentric circles of their society, they were almost on the very outskirts of, like, they were worse than like lepers and tax collectors and prostitutes and stuff like that in their culture. They were worse than them. So when Jesus uses this parable, he's trying to make an example and a statement to say the worst was the one that ended up helping. And we want to dive into that just a little bit. So we have our guests who want to help us with that. So we want to unpack the narrative first, and then we want to bring it into our specific cultural context. So here we go. Danae, as we unpack the characters and we unpack the roles in our parable, what was the priest and Levites' response to seeing the beaten up man, and why do you think they responded in that way?
Okay. So, Jesus makes it extremely clear for us here that a priest and a Levite, Levites were the priests of the 12 tribes, the ones who were ordained by God to serve him in the temple, and among other things like that. They were rather important in the religious culture. So naturally, Jesus' critics, who he's addressing in this parable, would know that, and they would expect a priest or a Levite to immediately give up whatever they were doing and help them. But that's not what happened. And I think the point of that, there are so many different reasons why the priest and the Levite could have gone out of their way to ignore someone helpless in front of them. So they could have been busy, they could have just, perhaps they were worried about work or society, social standing, like whoever this person is, they are not worthy of my time. And they are not, and their problems are not my problems, their situation is not my situation. I have other things to do other than to help this person. So, yeah.
No,
their response was, if we had context for what the two of them were doing, then maybe an argument could be made, but there's no legitimate reason why they would not help, unfortunately.
Yep, absolutely. And they created a lot of excuses, whether in their head or verbally. They were by themselves, so we don't fully know. Yeah. But the statement that you said, they didn't think that it was worthy of their time. That's a profound statement to say, for sure. So what about the Samaritan, Levi? What was his response, and what was so radical about it?
Well, the Samaritan obviously responded with compassion right away by going out of his way, probably while he was busy doing other things, probably traveling because that was a main traveling road. Went out of his way, gave up his resources, his time, his money, and just like at the time, obviously you gave context about how Samaritans and like the Jews just didn't like each other. So that's why I think it's just so like radical that he just went out of his way, giving up what would be probably at the time his most valuable, like his time, just everything, just gave it up to that man right there. So, yeah.
And I think it's fascinating to say that you both spoke to time.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I'm too busy, that's time. And then you said his most valuable thing was time. And he used it, which is pretty unique. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's keep moving around in our characters here. Within the Samaritan, Deanna, what excuses could he have easily given? So Levi gave one, time. What are some other excuses that he could have easily given to justify not helping?
I think he definitely could have used the man's culture, though it doesn't explicitly say. The context is that the man lying on the road was Jewish. So one of the things the Samaritan could have said is, he's Jewish, I may get in trouble. I don't have the money to care for him. He's not worth the trouble, like the priest and the Levite, or he's dying anyway. Might as well just leave him.
That's real. That's raw to say he's dying anyway. Is it a hopeless cause to possibly? Yeah, I could have seen that possibly going through his head. Danae, one more for the Samaritan. What things did the Samaritan sacrifice to help this Jewish man?
Well, one thing, if we can imagine his headspace of, there's this, who knows if he knew if this man was a Jewish man, but assuming that the recipient of the mistreatment is a Jewish man, then the Samaritan is giving up more than just his time and his money and his overall plan for whatever he was going to do that day. He's giving up a lot of his pride and his resentment to the Jewish people. Like, it's not just about him being a good godly person. It's more like there's been enough cultural tension between those two peoples for so many years now. It's so much more under the surface that he could have been so angry about or so bitter about. He's like, I don't have time to help this person, and yet he didn't. He looked past the fact that he didn't see a half-dead Jewish man. He's a half-dead man on the side of the road. And that's completely changed his point of view and his actions for if he accounted for the other thing.
That's rich. I think that to say, as you've all said, he had every reason, every excuse in the book to not help. And the very man that could have had resentment, annoyance, excuse that was maybe invalidated, being more of a discriminated group, he still saw through that and past that. What about the innkeeper for a second? Soup, let me backtrack. What about the bloodied man? Deanna, help me with this one. I want to read into the narrative just for a second, and we don't know, the text does not say, it says he was left half dead. So there's a chance he could have been conscious. He could have been unconscious and half dead, or he could have been conscious and half dead. So I want to help me with this for a second. Let's imagine he had some level of consciousness when the priest and the Levite passed him by. How do you think that would have made him feel if he would have realized that the people that should have helped him didn't?
I think he probably would have felt like what we most felt, which was hurt. Like, I'm here and I need help, and you just walked right past. But I also think he might have felt betrayed by the people in his own community he may or may not have interacted with normally. You know, they just passed him by.
Yeah.
He might have been desperate. As if he was awake, he was feeling all that pain. Yeah.
Yeah, almost trying to put yourself in that shoe or sandal for a moment of if you were half down the road and the person that you thought, picture the person that you thought would help you, and they just passed you right by. How would that make you feel? So how about the Samaritan man when he chose to help? And what about the bloody man? Did he deserve it? Do you think he deserved to get beaten up? Does that even matter in this context?
So I think he would have been grateful, but then also confused because the Samaritan wasn't a part of his culture. And I'm sure if he was conscious, he was probably anticipating everyone that he saw come up that road to just walk past him. And then he may even have felt guilty for being in this situation and having to, interrupt someone's time or what they were doing because he couldn't help himself. And I think, personally, that no one should have to go through what the Jewish man did. But in terms of the story, the importance of how beat up the man was shows how merciful the Samaritan was as a person, because the Jewish man was so hurt. The Samaritan couldn't reconcile what was happening. Like he couldn't, the cultural tension and the resentment just wasn't clicking in his mind, and he had to help him no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to think, like, because of his reaction to seeing the bloodied man, like, I hold it fancy in my head that maybe even if this guy had like a minor injury, that he would still, like, he couldn't walk, he couldn't see straight, maybe he got punched in the face or injured his leg. Like, I would like to think that the Samaritan still would have helped him for every single reason, and if this man were half dead. If for no other reason than to give him something peaceful to pass on with. Giving a moment of peace before he could have died right there. Like, I don't think it was by pure chance that the Samaritan happened to be carrying oil and wine with him. So,
Almost as if he's just kind of ready to be helpful.
yeah.
That's good.
It's not every day you're ready. You're ready for a guy just laying in the road with whatever medical supplies you need.
Sure. What do you think about did he deserve it, or does that even matter? What would you say to that? Sorry? What? Yeah.
I would say he didn't deserve it. But we don't know the context of the Jewish man. So who knows if he was living this extra life of sin. Who knows? We don't know. But I think it matters because it kind of symbolizes how we are in life. And just how we are so broken in our sin. Like this man was half dead on the road. We're walking around half dead in our sin every day.
Yep. That's good. Well, let's talk about the Innkeeper for a moment. What was the Innkeeper's response, and what was specific about his aid that was different than what the Samaritan could have done or did do, but it was equally needed? What would you say?
So I'm going to look at my notes here.
Please.
Well, so I thought it was pretty interesting to see the Innkeeper's response, how he was so willing and able to give him the help that he needed. Because imagine you have a Samaritan man carrying this half-dead Jewish guy on what was hopefully not grace. But just that's a lot of trouble for some man to accept, to give him a room and also trust that the Samaritan would come back the next day, because he had to be on his way, probably off to go do some job or something. But Yeah, and then this like the specificity of his aid, of just being able to give him the like his time, just being able to allow him that healing stage, being able to get him back up on his feet. I think that was what was equally needed, but different from the Samaritan. So yeah.
And the innkeeper was able to provide a literal physical home or a
Right.
bed. That the Samaritan, he had bandages and he had oil, but he didn't have a bed in his backpack. So
Yeah,
to be
right.
able to go to an innkeeper and he could give him those needs that the Samaritan man wasn't able to provide. So there was some specifics that both the Samaritan man and the innkeeper needed to provide to this moment. So here's what I want to do. We've talked about the narrative. We talked about the characters. Now let's bring it into our moment. Let's bring it into our cultural context of 21st century America. In our modern context, Deanna, what excuses can we give where we act like the priest, the Levite, and turn a blind eye to a need?
So I'm sure there's like a long list of excuses, but one of them is I'm too busy to help right now. You know, that person isn't my friend. We're not cool like that. They don't like me. I don't like them, so I can't help them. You know, my group of friends or the people that I hang out with might see me differently if I help someone like them. You know, I don't want to help them because they might not like me afterwards, or, you know, they are not going to want my help.
And as Deanna just listed off 7 different reasons, I'll bet you could come up with another 7 or 8, which you'll probably do in small group. What other excuses do we give to turn a blind eye to people in need? And we're not just talking people of color. We're talking about different examples and scenarios in your life that you see that just are people, humans in need. And what do we do as excuses or lack thereof? Levi, the Jews had actively avoided, insulted, and hated Samaritans for generations. Yet, despite this discriminatory reality, the Samaritan chose to help. What can we learn from this?
Well, we can just, what we can learn is just don't turn a blind eye towards people that look differently, or like different from you. Look past just all of the ethnic, race, like boundaries, the outside, and just look and see like an actual person that you need to show compassion for. We need to reach out and lend aid to that person. So, yeah.
Yeah, being able to, it's a lot easier said than done to do this, but actually over the weekend, if you attended Gateway Church on the weekend, there was a gentleman on the stage who used a phrase, and it's a mantra of their marriage, and the mantra is see a need, meet a need. And I greatly resonate with that. The Samaritan saw a need, and he met a need. The question for all of us, though, is are we too narrow-minded in our vision to see other people's needs? Are we too busy? I can be the first to raise my hand about being too busy sometimes to see other people's needs. See a need, meet a need. What about this? Danae, interesting question here. What are risks of trying to break through racial barriers as someone tries to do that?
There are so many. It kind of breaks my heart that people have found reason upon reason upon reason to not associate with someone who doesn't look like them. We are one people, and this is not how our lives are intended to be. But some risks that are unfortunately associated with trying to cross that bridge, or one of those bridges, is resentment from both parties. So maybe you you reach out to one specific person and that's outside your friend group that that no one associates with, and the next day all of your friends are giving you a side eye for talking to the unpopular kid, if you're a popular kid. So another is, well, the fear of not receiving what you give back. I know me as a person, I like getting a compliment if I give a compliment. That sounds really petty, but
No,
it
it's
is
human.
it's very true for me especially. And it feels nice, but sometimes when you give affection and someone else doesn't give it to you, it hurts, and that stops you from continuing. Or it even causes you to throw something out that is not God-given, is not edifying. And another is both of your backgrounds. So you could be like, I don't want to say this. You could be like, just any way, like the risks that people take. It shouldn't be called a risk because it's something good, and yet we all find trouble. We all have trouble just finding reasons to reach out to everyone who's lost in that sea of the word different. Yes, that's such a broad term that covers so many lives.
Yeah. You said, I want to see if I can grab a hold of something you said, that doing something good shouldn't be a risk, but so often it is. To pursue justice should not be something that's frowned upon or made fun about or ridiculed, and yet it happens so often. And what we do know is that Jesus was a pursuer of justice. So therefore we are as well. And since we live in a broken, jacked up world, and unfortunately there's a lot of broken, jacked up Christians as well in our thinking that's not healthy, pursuing justice, pursuing rightness can unfortunately still have quite a bit of risk. One specifically that even came to mind for me right now was like, what about like family members? If you're trying to pursue something that you would say is God honoring in the world of justice, but your family would not take kindly to the idea, make fun of you, threaten to throw you out of the home. I know that sounds like an extreme example, but that's the thing. There's risks when we try to pursue a life that honors Jesus. Well, thanks, Danae, for speaking into that. Deanna, this innkeeper idea, knowing that there was a Samaritan man who could help in certain ways, and there was an innkeeper who could help in another specific way. Who are the innkeepers in our modern day context, people or organizations that can give longer term care or professional care?
So I'm going to speak generally in our community. I don't know if anyone was here for Mobilize missions on Sunday, but some innkeepers would be The Point, Bridge Academy, Bridgeway House, and then in terms of general society, homeless shelters, Medicare, Medicaid, their government programs, free clinics for those without insurance. And it's not even just buildings. If you think about it, all these buildings had to be funded. Somebody had to give some money to make it happen. And so it's people who have been blessed by God with so much wealth that they are just able to just give and give and give. And they have a really huge impact in the community too.
Yeah, not just the money as well, but the hands, the time. People, I hear a lot that people are running very short on time, or I don't have enough time for this, or time is money. That every second you spent could have gone to something. Just the thought that every second that these volunteers and people who give up their weekends, just the thought of that they could be at home taking care of their kids, doing literally anything else, that they're here with people who don't have what they have.
Yeah.
That just to me is so powerful and so loving, that they're just willing to love on people with their time. Even if they never see even if they never see a person that they are helping, they still know that they are helping.
Yeah, and to say that you brought up some organizations in our area, and I'm not sure, as Deanna was rattling some of those off, the Parksburg Point, just a few miles down the road, and Bridgeway Halfway House, or what was the... Bridge Academy, thank you, Bridge Academy. These are some really neat organizations that are out there that where you're like, man, I wanna help, I wanna do something, but I don't really know what to do. There are tons of opportunities to serve your community and to be disciples of justice in some of these spaces that Deanna rattled off, and then also, yeah, money. I'm assuming that no one in here has thousands and thousands of dollars to be able just to give away to people, and yet when you start having a job, and if God does bless you with a lot of income, a way to be an innkeeper is you get to bless other organizations or churches or people who are doing that work, that boots on the ground in that way. So there's a lot of ways to think about being an innkeeper. Also, counseling, just professional counselors. Those are innkeepers who tend to those in longer term care. Levi, we may not be passing by bloodied and bleeding people, like literal bloodied, bleeding people. But what are ways that we can leave the marginalized unattended and overlooked?
I think sometimes, like, groups of people are stereotyped, or we make assumptions about groups of people, and that kind of just leaves them. We isolate them out of like our groups. We kind of attack those groups of people. So I think that's like the main thing that we do to leave those marginalized like groups of people overlooked. So yeah, that's what I think.
So almost not even so much silence, which is a way, right. but criticism and looking down on people by just our small comments that we make. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's absolutely something. You were gonna say something?
Certainly. What I've noticed can happen is unconscious isolation. So a lot of what happens, like people don't do that. I mean, some people don't do this intentionally. Like a lot of the times, people don't know what they say until someone says something.
Sure.
Like in those little talk spaces that you have with your friends, and you're just like, some comment, some little comment about one thing, or something unsaid about something that can really impact how that relationship will go on from then to however long you associate with them.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that you don't, may sound like a no duh, but you don't know what you don't know. So when someone informs you, you then know, and hopefully, because here's the thing, a lot of times we can say things out of ignorance, or we can act out of ignorance, and I'll be honest, as a white male, I can act out of ignorance and not knowing how there can be people being marginalized that I'm not aware of. And so I do believe there is such a thing as white privilege, and I do believe that even as a white male, there's even additional level. So like, how am I being aware of that and growing in my knowledge of this, and in empathy and compassion and awareness and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Deanna, there are people in our cultural context that are marginalized every single day. And if Jesus is an advocate of justice, as we mentioned earlier, and the marginalized, how are we supposed to respond then ourselves?
I think the first thing we should do is try our very hardest to be empathetic. It might be hard because we don't go through what they go through. But just putting yourself in their shoes, even for a moment, is really good. And then I also believe that we should help whenever and wherever. I'm a firm believer in always being prepared. So I like to keep first aid kits in my bags wherever I go, because you never know. And so whenever and wherever is for you, it can be serving, giving. Our response should be like the Samaritans. We should help uplift others who need it so that we can share the love of Christ for everyone we ever meet, ever.
So as you said, you're trying to be like a Samaritan, having a little med kit in your pack at all time. So if you're like, what's something I can do? Go buy a med kit at Walmart and have that in your bag. You'll be surprised on how many people could be in need of a Band-Aid or some other, So that's good. I love it. All right, so here's what we want to do. We want to, as we land the plane of this conversation and dialogue, this is not meant to be an exhaustive conversation. It's meant to be something that we start and then you take it into your groups now. Before we do that, though, give us a final thought of insight, advice that you give to your peers. You don't have all the answers. They're never claiming to have all the answers. But what advice or insight would you give directly to your peers in this conversation of injustice and awareness of the marginalized?
Be comfortable with the uncomfortable is what I would say. These conversations can be hard, and I know that I have a lot to learn, and you can step into a space of like not knowing what to say or feeling like you're just not really in the right spot, but like that's where you learn the most, being uncomfortable. So that's where I think that's probably my final word for others.
That's so good. Be uncomfortable with the uncomfortable, or be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Yeah.
If you ever find yourself in a conversation setting like this, or potentially something easier or even heavier, know that you are talking about something that is worth talking about. And don't stop at what is easy, because nothing easy is ever worth doing, usually. The hard decisions in your life are going to be the ones that will mean the most to you later, or potentially mean the most to someone else.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
I would say never stop learning and be okay with being corrected, because it will happen. And I know we all hate, like, oh, why are they correcting me? They don't know anything. They do. They know something. So just be okay with it. Just roll with the punches.
Those are three profound insights to leave us with. And if I may give one, I think I would say this. Get okay. It kind of goes around to being comfortable with uncomfortable, but like, be around people that don't look like you and think like you. Because if you are always around the people that look like you and think like you, you're not going to be challenged. You're surrounded by a bunch of yes men and yes women and people who aren't ever going to push you further in life. So be okay and be around people who can, now I'm not saying all the time, but be around people who think differently than you, look differently than you. You can learn a lot. Friends, thank you so much. I'm delightfully encouraged by, again, your willingness to tackle this type of topic. We all know that this is not small, and there's so many questions, so many different avenues in which we could talk about. So even if there's a piece of you, GSM, that's like, well, why didn't they talk about this? Or we just don't have the time to talk about every single idea and topic. What we wanted to filter it through the lens of the parable of the Good Samaritan as our home base, and you're going to now take that and keep unpacking that conversation. It took an exorbitant amount of prep and courage for them to be here right now. Can we give them a hand for being willing to? So what I want to do now is I want to pray over us and our conversations that we're going to have, and then I have one other announcement, and then we'll be dismissed. So Jesus, we do ask that in these conversations about the marginalized and those that are discriminated, and those in our thinking and our action and our inaction, that you, God, you may challenge us. That you would confront us with our own bias, our own sin, with our own apathy, with our own excuses. While also that you would comfort us in something that seems so grandiose of how could I ever make a difference in this type of conversation? That you would comfort us with your love and your empowerment to take steps and have conversations and to get uncomfortable. And also, thirdly, God, that you would just call us into what you would have for us, and that we would do it with just an unashamed mentality and a grit and a humility about it. We need you, and we can't do it without you. We love you, God. Thanks for loving us first. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to break to small groups. You're going to have your dialogues, your conversations, and then